Tonight, the world remembers 9/11, 10 years after the day that shocked the world. Police Minister Rob Johnson has put the plan of axing traffic wardens on hold. Good evening.
Also on DHK News, Hong Kong Journalists Association demanded answers from ATV, and the search continues for the missing victims of the Chilean air crash.
Today marked the 10th year memorial of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, when horror gripped the heart of America, forcing Western world to wage war on terror. But how will Australians remember it, and what can the world learn from this horrible tragedy? Tonight on our special report, 9/11, 10 years on. This is the day that we will forever remember. As the symbol of the American power collapsed, the New Yorkers were running in fear. Until today, it is not a surprise that most people can clearly recall the horrific images they saw on television.
Seeing the footage and hearing the stories of the victims, family of the victims and stuff, it really strikes a nerve with me.
The first I heard of it was that my eldest son rang and said, "Mum, turn on the TV, a plane has just flown into the Twin Towers." My immediate reaction was, "Cameron, don't be so stupid." We were having dinner and so put on the TV and looked at what was happening.
I think I just saw on the news sort of just like those, the crashes of the planes crashing into the buildings, yeah. That was, I think, on repeat on the news.
The media widely report about the memorial, with the ABC's special report of pictures taken and personal stories recorded just one day before the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center. Further to the hunt of Osama bin Laden, recently a dramatic twist happened. The world's most wanted man was killed by the US Special Forces at a Pakistani compound. The Americans gathered around the nation to celebrate his death.
USA! 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 USA!
Apart from the war on terror, there were also strong discussions on how to prevent it. Murdoch University Professor of Security Studies Samuel McKinder believes that addressing the root problems in societies can avoid terrorism. He also thinks that 9/11 has taught the world that no society can be immune to terrorism.
Because very often terrorism is driven by local dynamics. If you want to deal with terrorism effectively, you need to address all those problems that have to do with feelings of alienation, problems that have to do with feelings of marginalization, problems that have to do with religious and ethnic intolerance. Very, very often the root causes lie in politics, they lie in economic structures, lie in the distribution of resources, lie in lack of tolerance for differing points of view. So if you want to have a good attack, a good antidote against terrorism, you need to address the underlying causes.
Today, the United States are on high alert as there is reliable intelligence that Al-Qaeda is planning another attack on the American soil. We can only wish that the world will return to some stability. Ivan Leung, DHK News.
Back home, the homeless people vow they will not move on in a rally this Thursday as the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting comes to Perth next month. The human rights activist Jerry Gigatos says the state government needs to keep its promises to house homeless people into intern accommodation during CHOGM's 2-week period.
They do not include or regard our homeless folk. We number 15,000 in the good state of Western Australia alone in our state budget. And if they're not going to include them, they're not going to address anything. They're not going to create the homeless-friendly precincts, the transitional accommodation, the psychosocial counselling, the programs needed to move people forwards to more positive and pro-social futures.
Shadow Housing Minister Mark McCowan said although he understands that a management strategy is needed for CHOGM, he believes that the state government needs to have a more comprehensive approach to deal with homelessness.
Well, the most important thing is to make sure that housing is affordable and that people have a job and the capacity to access it. In terms of people who are homeless for mental illness, who might not be able to work, assisting them into supported accommodation, making sure that they have assistance in terms of budgeting, managing their incomes and so forth. All of that across government sort of approach needs to be put in place.
Another audit report tabled at State Parliament this Wednesday discovered that more is needed to be done to manage conflict of interest issues. The call comes as the Health Department reported to the Parliament that a small group of staff accepted 25 gifts between 30 to 350 Australian dollars.
A second public sector performance report for the year has been released, investigating if gifts or benefits have influenced decisions made by the WA Health Department. The report hasn't found any discrepancies with staff or private companies receiving benefits. However, it did identify some severe weaknesses, including the department's failure to realise possible conflicts of interest, risk monitoring and managing abilities. It does comment that free travel and accommodation was properly approved and all benefits received were well documented. The Auditor-General Colin Murphy says they've made a number of recommendations for the Health Department to take up.
The issue that we largely looked at was to see whether any of those gifts or any of those travel were subsequently in any way influencing procurement decisions by the department. So we went through each of those cases and made sure that none of the people who received gifts or benefits were involved in buying decisions by the department. We also made sure that all of those gifts and benefits were authorised by the Director General or by the appropriate Chief Executive, and they were.
The Health Minister Kim Hames responded, saying his department will pay close attention and apply changes to areas that are needed.
The Auditor-General has given us some minor areas to tweak and tighten up, and we're more than happy to do those.
Johanna, Lettenmaire, DHK News.
The Police Minister Rob Johnson has decided to put the plan of axing traffic wardens at 18 schools onto the back burner after being criticised by both the state opposition and communities for putting children's lives at risk. Eric Ripper said the state government can easily afford this program.
Police Minister Rob Johnson is facing a new wave of criticism as he announced his plan to cut the number of traffic wardens in some schools based on the number cost in the area and the usage of child crossing. 18 schools were facing the Lollipop Man X, but the Wednesday Rob Johnson was forced to back down after strong opposition from the communities.
So I'm pleased to announce, Mr. Speaker, that I am today directing the committee to put on hold any reduction in Type A traffic wardens at any of our schools until further notice.
Opposition leader Eric Ripper says the communities are frustrated and protested in order to gain a temporary win in the situation. But he speculates that the police minister will try again when the public outrage has died down.
I think it's a basic responsibility of government to look after the safety of children walking to school. We actually want to encourage children to walk to school. The expense is not great. The government is spending a lot of money on new officers for the Premier's Palace. They can afford this program.
The traffic wardens in those 18 schools crossing will continue their rules until further notice. John White, DHK News.
To Hong Kong stories now, and Asia Television's news department has urged management to give a full account of the controversy surrounding the resignation of their boss Leung after an erroneous report on the death of the former Chinese president Jiang Zemin.
Asia Television asked its news controller Tammy Tam to take immediate leave for 2 months. Ms. Tam resigned earlier this week after Mr. Leung Ka-wing's quit. In a statement, the station's editorial staff said they wanted the major investor in the station to openly explain why Mr. Leung had not been able to block the false report from being broadcast in July. The statement did not name the major investor, although it's understood to be Wang Zheng, who said at the time that he did not know about the report until he watched TV that night. At the same time, the Hong Kong Journalists Association has called on the management of the ATV to explain if it had pressurized its news department into airing false reports. Laurent Chan, DHK News, Hong Kong.
The search for air crash victims in Chile continues as some of the bodies of 21 passengers are recovered. One of Chile's most popular national television hosts, Felipe Camiroga, and another 5 TVN journalists were lost at sea. The nation mourns their loss, and a vigil was held at TVN's headquarters. Chile correspondent Brian Ramir has this report.
Bodies of 4 of the plane's 21 passengers were discovered within a day of the Friday afternoon plane crash, yet no others have appeared in the days following, as rescue workers have still not recovered the main bodies of the plane and human remains have been discovered over the wide area. Officials suspect the force of the plane collision with the ocean caused the aircraft to disintegrate on impact, recovering any remains intact enough to identify victims without DNA analysis. Alamán said is unlikely. However, the defense minister said the search will continue with the same focus and dedication that it has since Friday. Yet rescue workers continue the search for remaining passengers. Families of the victims have already begun the process of saying goodbye. However, the government of Chile has organized a giant search party to find the bodies of the 21 victims. Defense Minister Andrés Alamán said, all human and superhuman resources available were being used to find victims, and that includes hiring up psychic. For DHK News, Brian Ramirez, Santiago, Chile.
Sports news is next with Camilo Mejia.
Thanks guys, and welcome to Evening Sport. And to the US Open, where Samantha Stours has beaten German opponent Angelique Kerber to become the first Australian woman in 27 years to reach the singles finals.
Samantha Stours has defeated the unseeded German Angelique Kerber to win her semi-final match, 6-3, 2-6, 6-2, and rise Australia's hopes to become US Open female winner. The match lasted for 1 hour and 46 minutes. The 27-year-old Stours from Queensland will play home against Serena Williams in her second Grand Slam final at 6:30 a.m. Australian East Coast time on Monday. Kenneth, DHK News.
And to basketball, and the Australian men's basketball team, the Boomers, and the women's team, the Opals, have both beaten their respective New Zealand rivals to qualify for next year's London Olympics. The Boomers beat New Zealand's Tall Blacks 81-64, while the Opals beat their opponents 92-73. Playing at the Brisbane Entertainment Centre, the Boomers had to fight hard to keep their Olympic dreams alive, while the Opals had a comfortable 17-point win against the New Zealand Tall Ferns. That is all the sport we have for you tonight. Now back to Ivan and Anna. Good night.
Thanks Cam, and that's how the world looks tonight.
You can stay in touch with us 24/7 at our Facebook page at the link below.
You're also welcome to join my page, search Ivan Leung and click like.
Thank you for your company. Good night.
Good night.